Hi folks, in this episode we're going to be talking about Bachelorette by Björk from her 1997 album Homogenic. This was the first song on the album that I remember really striking me, and it did not strike me in a positive way. I intensely disliked it on first hearing. It took me quite a while to come around on it, and I remember thinking, who is this lady? Like, why is this so melodramatic? Why is it so over the top? Like, is she serious with this? And it turns out, no, she is not completely serious with it. Now that I have been able to find some interviews with her and some discussions that she's had about the song, and I have a little context for it, no, she is not completely serious about it. That doesn't mean that the song makes complete sense to me now, but at least I have a little bit more insight into what is going on with it. And by the end of this episode, hopefully you will too. So let's dive right in.
I'm a fountain of light in the shape of a girl. You're the pearl on the brim, hypnotized by the well. Drink me, make me feel real. Wet your feet in the stream. Game we're playing is life. Love's a two-way dream.
Even after I got used to Björk singing and the lyrics and the production, the song continued to bother me. And then when I finally did go in to learn how to play it on the guitar and to figure out what the chords and the melody notes were, I realized why it bugged me so much, which is it is impossible to identify the key. The main loop of the song is only two chords alternating, but it is very difficult to tell which one of those two chords is the tonic, like which one is home bass. The melody is fairly simple, but quite odd in spite of its simplicity. And yeah, there's just a lot of musical interest in spite of the song's apparent simplicity. First, a little background. Björk co-wrote this song with the Icelandic poet, novelist, and screenwriter Sjón. There are several songs that the two of them have co-written together. She brought him in on this one because she felt that the song was too personal for her to write herself. It was expressing a part of herself that she finds maybe a little embarrassing. And I guess it helps her to have like this outside perspective. Sjón is a character. I mean, as you might expect for anybody who writes songs with Björk, the thing that he's done that has the widest exposure is he wrote the screenplay for the film The Northmen, which Björk appears in as a blind seeress, priestess, shaman character. But he's also written a bunch of novels and a bunch of poems and some other screenplays. And these poems, it's impossible for me to read them and not hear them in Björk's voice. So for example, here is his poem about the alchemist. He sits in an old sickbed, unstitching the seams in his pajamas. Someone has sprinkled wheat over him so that now he resembles a moth. His head touches the wall. On his forehead, a film is shown in slow motion. A blonde with drunken lips sings soundlessly. I mean, can't you just hear Björk? A blonde with drunken lips sings soundlessly, right? So, yeah, that's where these lyrics come from, and they are pretty opaque. Björk has said that this song is part of an ongoing saga about this character that is sort of a semi-autobiographical one. There's this narrative through line between Human Behaviour, Isobel, Bachelorette, Oceania, and Wanderlust. And Sjón co-wrote all of these songs with Björk except for Human Behaviour.
Definitely no logic.
In an interview in Record Collector magazine, Björk explains, "There's an epic continuity between human behavior, Isobel, and Bachelorette. It's basically a character I invented called Isobel. In human behavior, she's a little girl. In Isobel, she moves to the big city in big lights. She functions with her intuition, which isn't very good in cities, and crashes with a lot of ill-behaved people. So she goes back and trains a lot of moths and sends them back as messengers of intuition into the city to people who are not working with their intuition. In Bachelorette, she takes over and trees grow over the city. It's part autobiography, part storytelling." When I hear the word bachelorette, I think of bachelorette parties, but I assume that Björk is just referring to unmarried women in general, and that makes sense because Isobel is married to herself, right? Not to somebody else.
My name is Isobel, married to myself. My love is Isobel, living by herself.
Bachelorette is in the second person. So she's talking to somebody. When she says, "You're the bird on the rim, hypnotized by the whirl," like, who is this you that she's talking to? I assumed when I first heard the song, she was talking to somebody who she was in a relationship with, probably not a very good relationship. But if it is meant to be addressed to anybody in particular, Björk and Schon have never said who that might be. And I don't actually think it's any specific person. Maybe Isobel is singing from the perspective of nature, and the you is like human technology, industry, rationality. Björk discusses this song on the Sonic Symbolism podcast, and she does seem to support this interpretation. So she says she looks at this protagonist as an emotional warrior. This is someone who is not with a weapon, not to destroy, but to confront people and try to unarm violence or weapons. This character is the most extreme side of her. And she says there are sides of people that are kind and tolerant and beautiful and gorgeous, but there are also parts in our characters which are over the top and very annoying and ridiculous. And she says, "I think for me to write the lyrics with Schon of Bachelorette was almost like a ridiculing of this character that has sincerity but is also making fun. That she's like a warrior of love," but Björk goes on to say, "I mean, for me to go on stage and look people in the eye and say I'm a fountain of blood in the shape of a girl, it's very beautiful but also kind of ridiculous." It's easy to look at Björk and see her as this kind of like autistic savant, and it's helpful to remember that she does have some self-awareness and that she is a little bit tongue-in-cheek, even when she seems like she's being excessively kind of raw and vulnerable. That opening line, "I'm a fountain of blood in the shape of a girl," reminds me of a hymn called "There is a Fountain Filled with Blood." During my brief gospel singing career, I sang that song, and I heard the title and was like, oh my God, that's terrifying. Like, it sounds like a death metal song. It actually turns out to be quite a pretty song. I don't know if Björk and Schon intended to refer to it or if it's just a coincidence, but there you have it. And by the way, the line, "If you forget my name, you will go astray like a killer whale trapped in a bay." Killer whales apparently do get trapped in bays. It's like a very serious thing. Bachelorette has the same sound palette as the rest of Homogenic, orchestral strings and a couple of other acoustic instruments, plus these processed electronic beats. My assumption is that they're from this catalog of Icelandic volcanic beats that Marcus Drives created for Björk in the pre-production of the album. She just drummed out a bunch of rhythms for him on the table, and he made a bunch of beats, literally 100 of them. And then she had this like catalog of beats to draw from that she could just insert into the songs on Homogenic. And then there are these additional very distorted beats kind of playing around those main couple of patterns that I guess were made by Mark Bell. I'm not totally sure. And they're very, very distorted. It sounds like they're maybe filtered and downsampled, like intentionally recorded in there at very low bit depth. So they sound like these slabs of digital noise. And that's something that after Homogenic has just become kind of a standard Björkism and something you hear on all of her albums. But back in 1997, it was a really new and disorienting timbre. And yeah, even now, all these years later, it still sounds very fresh to me. The rhythm of it is odd for a supposed piece of electronically produced pop. It's really a tango, and the melody is also very tango-like. The harmony is tango-like. The overall kind of melodramatic feeling of it is very tango-like. I can't find a specific tango song that Björk was clearly drawing on, but I have a couple of possible candidates. One of them is this tune called Indio Manso by Carlos de Sarli from 1958. And it's got that piano bass line and that minor key. I can also refer you to a tune by Astor Piazzolla called La Milonga del Ángel, performed here by Fabio Furia in 2014. Her song Oceania from 2004 has a tango-like rhythm, and apparently she described it as a techno tango to one of the beatboxers who appeared on it when she was trying to tell him like what kind of groove she wanted.
One breath away from Mother Oceania, your nimble feet make prints in my sand. You have done good for yourselves since you left my wet embrace and crawled ashore.
By the way, Björk has not spoken a lot about tango. Aside from talking about Oceania as being a techno tango, The only explicit reference I've ever heard her make to it is in this recent interview with Apple Music, in which she says, "The older I get, I feel more and more strong about this. We have to defend our right to dance. You look at tango people and salsa people, they're dancing till they're in their 90s. I'm going to be techno raving till I'm 90. And I'm with her. I think that is a healthy attitude. I haven't really been to a tango event, but I've been to some salsa dancing events, and like, everybody is on the floor, little kids and grandparents and everybody in between. It's not just for young, cool people. It's for everybody. Yeah. And I just think that's really beautiful. I think it's something that white American culture is severely lacking. Old people just don't dance, and that's a bummer because dance is good for you. Yeah, it's fun, it's healthy, it brings societies together, it gets you connected to your body. God, I would love to be dancing when I'm 90. Let tango and salsa be an inspiration to us all. Bachelorette is in a minor key, but which minor key? Björk did publish a score of this song in her book 34 Scores for Organ, Piano, and Celeste. On that chart, she has the key signature with 2 flats, so G minor. That would seem to settle the case, but I just don't necessarily hear it that way. I mean, I believe her that that's what she intends, but I also believe that she's going for a certain kind of ambiguity. So the first few seconds of the song are the strings playing this G and D, this fourth, that certainly implies G minor. But when the song really gets going, the first chord that you hear is C minor. That chord just keeps recurring in the strong position in the meter. Each time through this main loop, we land on C minor. And that tends to undercut the sense that we are in G minor. This main loop, it's just 4 chords. So it's C minor, G minor with D in the bass, C minor 6 with E flat in the bass, and then G minor with D in the bass again. That's only really 2 chords, C minor and G minor, but the G minor feels unstable and weak as a point of resolution. First of all, it's in the 2nd and 4th hypermeasures of this 4 hypermeasure loop. Those are the weak metrical positions, they're unaccented. And also, the 5th is in the bass. G is not in the bass, D is in the bass. And that's a chord tone, but it's not the root. So yeah, it just doesn't feel conclusive or definite. Whereas that first C minor chord, the bass note is C. And normally that would be an indication that C minor is home bass. That 3rd chord is an interesting one. C minor 6th has A natural in it. That's the 2nd in the key overall, and the natural 6th relative to the chord. This chord has a real kind of smoky mysteriousness to it because the E flat, the 3rd of the chord, is a tritone away from the A, the 6th. And there's this interesting intervallic symmetry because from A to C, from the 6th to the root, is a minor 3rd, and then from C to E flat, from the root to the 3rd, is a minor 3rd. So yeah, it's almost like a diminished chord. And I see in some people's transcriptions online that they hear it as a diminished chord. It is not one, but you could think of it as being an inversion of A half diminished, A minor 7 flat 5. So yeah, if we're in G minor, then both C minor and C minor 6th are subdominant, but you could also just hear them as the 1 chord and G minor as the minor 5 chord. Yeah, it's very ambiguous. And the melody doesn't do much to disambiguate. This main melody, it's just a pair of phrases alternating back and forth.
I'm a fountain of blood in the shape of a girl. You're the bird on the
flat, A, G, B flat, C. That jump from B flat down to C, that minor seventh, that is very striking. There's a much wider interval than you typically get in the first line of what is supposedly a pop song. If you think of these pairs of phrases as calls and responses, this is the call. Like if you think of it as a question and answer, this is the question. But that big descent, that big jump downwards by a minor seventh, it feels like a period, and especially because it's landing so strongly on the root of the chord. Second phrase in the pair, that's B flat, C, B flat, A, G, B flat. We're ending on the third of the G minor chord that is less definite than the root of the chord. And also it's rising at the end. In speech, when you rise at the end of a phrase, it sounds like you're asking a question. And when you descend at the end of a phrase, it sounds like you're speaking definitely with periods or exclamation points. So you have this contradiction where the phrase that descends at the end like a period is on what is supposedly the 4 chord, and the phrase that ascends at the end like a question mark is supposedly on the tonic. You're getting this conflicting information. Björk did go to music school and is a pretty highly trained musician and a very sophisticated one, so I am sure that all of this is intentional on some level. Okay, so then we come to the other section of the song. And you could call it the bridge, although it's not really functioning as a bridge. And the B section is very definitely in C minor, which further undermines your sense of the overall song supposedly being in G minor. The chords in the bridge are C minor, G minor, A flat major 7, D flat major 7. These first 3 chords are just straightforward C natural minor or C Aeolian mode if you prefer to think of it that way. But the 4th chord is an interesting one, D flat major 7th. That's the flat 2 chord in C minor. You could think of it as coming from parallel C Phrygian mode. Björk does love Phrygian mode, she uses it a lot. The melody in this section, it's first we have this just straightforward walk up the C minor scale. She hits every note in the C minor scale except for A flat. And she's going from C to C. She's going from, the tonic to the tonic. But that final tonic, it doesn't quite have the sense of conclusion and definiteness that it might otherwise have because it's not falling on the C minor chord, it's falling on A flat major 7th. And then it continues to hang over the D flat major 7 chord where it's the major 7th, which is like the weakest note in the chord. Yeah, it's very mysterious and oblique. Then in the second half of the B section, the melody changes to this riff. It just kind of repeats F, G, B flat, and in the absence of any other context, I might want to hear that as G minor, like G natural minor or G minor pentatonic, but we're in C minor, so yeah, it just is further harmonic lack of conclusiveness and more contradiction and being unsettled. So yeah, even though, again, this tune is very repetitive and very predictable, the things that it's repeating are inconclusive and ambiguous, and that's a real Björkism. The instrumentation in this section has this new addition to it. It has this alp horn or alpine horn or alpenhorn. And it's just playing these quiet, long tones that are kind of buried there in the mix. Why Björk decided to use an alp horn and not just a French horn like a normal person, I don't know. My main association with the alp horn is Ricola commercials. Ricola! But that's because I'm an ignoramus. Maybe it means something more profound to people who actually know something about European culture. And then to get from the B section back to the A section, we have this sort of like rising, swirling crescendo.
Like a killer whale trapped in a bay. I'm a cloud of cinders.
There's no particular harmonic logic to this transition. That D flat major 7 chord doesn't exactly prepare us to mentally return to the key of G minor. And it doesn't. It resolves back to C minor the way that it did in the bridge. But now we're supposed to hear that C minor as being the 4 chord in G minor. I don't know. It's a mystery. I think it's less that we're supposed to hear this as a logical, functional harmonic structure and more as just a series of states or locations that we occupy in these two loops. There's one other instrument on Bachelorette, that's the accordion. It might be present all the way through the song, but if it is, it's buried very deeply, but it kind of emerges out of the mist at the very end, much the same arrangement idea as we heard in Yoga. I don't know if the accordion is an explicit reference to tango or if Björk just had accordion on the brain, but yeah, it definitely evokes tango for me. There are quite a few covers of this song that have been commercially released and that are out there on YouTube, and I don't think too many of them are very good. And in fairness to these people, covering Björk songs is always hard. If you're not going to try to recreate the whole kind of complex, elaborate sound world, then you can strip it down to something really minimal, and that sometimes works. I mean, Björk has done that with some of her own material, but very often it just makes the songs feel kind of small. And Bachelorette as a song is so minimalist and so kind of simple and repetitive that without all of that production and without the drama of Björk's performance, there's kind of not a lot there. So yeah, a very difficult song to cover. I think the most interesting cover version of it out there isn't really a cover at all. It's by a Turkish artist named Müslüm Gürses. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Aşk tesadüfleri sever, kader ayrılıkları, yollar geçmeyi sever, insan aramayı, güller açmayı sever, zaman soldurmayı, eller birleşmeyi sever, yollar ayrılmayı. Her
When I say it's not a cover, I mean that these lyrics that he's singing are not a translation of Bachelorette's lyrics. They're a completely unrelated set of ideas that he just set to the tune of Bachelorette. And that's a strange idea, but a cool one. And I especially love that Turkish mode or scale that he uses on the B section. I don't know what it's called, but with that raised fourth, ooh, it's so cool.
Herkes geçmişi öder.
I also appreciate this cover by Trio Shalva, this Israeli jazz trio. They play it on the oud, which is another gesture in the direction of Middle Eastern and North African music. Tango, like all Iberian music, has strong influences from the Arab world, thanks to Spain being conquered by North Africans. So I don't know if Trio Shalva is making that reference intentionally or, they're just kind of feeling it intuitively, but I think it works pretty well. It's hard to cover a Björk song, and given how popular and influential she is all these decades after her rise to prominence, you would think that there would be more people trying it, but there aren't. Actually, I went online to see if there are any Björk tribute bands out there, and no, there are not. There are literally none that I can find. There is an improv comedy group called Björk Tribute Band, but the whole point of the joke is that there are no Björk tribute bands, yeah. Back in the early 2000s, there was this group called Travis Sullivan's Björkestra that I went to see a bunch of times, and they were a jazz big band that only did Björk songs, and they were pretty cool in kind of a music school nerd kind of way. But yeah, it's not exactly a model that you can replicate, yeah. There are a couple of hip-hop songs that have sampled Bachelorette, and by a wide margin, the coolest one is Illest Alive. It's an instrumental for a group called Main Attractions, made by a producer named Clams Casino, and that is a reference to a particularly gross Seinfeld joke.
Ooh, something's not sitting right. Oh, the Clams Casino. Get out of here. Chef recommends.
The Main Attraction song is fine, but I really just like the instrumental. I think that this Clams Casino track is way cooler than any of the Björk covers. But like I said, it's hard to cover a Björk song. Björk inspires all of this very intense fandom, certainly from me, but from a lot of other people too. And one thing that fans like to do is participate in the art in some way. Like, they make fan fiction, or they do covers, or they sing stuff at karaoke, or they start tribute bands, they do remixes. And Björk is challenging for that kind of activity. I guess you can sing her at karaoke, I guess. I have not really seen someone do it. There are a lot of people out there remixing her stuff, but remixing is technically and musically a pretty challenging thing to do. So it's not something you can just kind of do casually. Björk did make some banging dance tracks early in her career, but by the time of Homogenic, like, this music is not really for dancing to, it's more for listening to. And certainly ever since then, none of her stuff has been particularly dance friendly. It's much more kind of like, quote, art music, unquote. It's more like classical music or jazz, where you have to kind of sit there and pay attention rather than it being a thing that's just kind of good background for partying to, yeah. A book that has been a major influence on my understanding of music is this book called Music as Social Life, The Politics of Participation by an ethnomusicologist named Thomas Torino. And so Torino is arguing that there are two big categories of musical performance. There's presentational and participatory. Presentational performances are what most of us think of as musical performances. So you have a bunch of professionals, or at least would-be professionals, up on a stage, and then you have this audience. And the audience is not really doing anything. Like, yeah, maybe dancing or singing along, but mostly they're just kind of there to witness this performance by these highly skilled, specialized performers. Presentational performances include classical, jazz, most pop, rock, certainly Björk concerts. And then there's participatory performances where there isn't this distinction between the performers and the audience. Everybody is performing. So think about a campfire sing-along or an amateur church choir, an amateur gospel choir. Think about like a blues jam or the kinds of sing-alongs that you do in elementary school. You could think of techno and hip-hop and mainstream pop as being participatory in the sense that it's music for dancing to, it's easy to sing along with or, yell along with. It's suitable for karaoke and other kinds of amateur performance. And participatory music has certain formal qualities to it, just for practical reasons. Like, participatory music tends to be really repetitive and predictable. So think of like the 12-bar blues or like a Raffi song or any song that's suitable for singing around the campfire. It's something that you can learn really easily, even if you're not a very highly skilled musician. It's something that you can just kind of jump in on. It's something that a bunch of complete strangers can just play together without having a lot of prior discussion or rehearsal. The beginnings and endings aren't very structured. Like, you can play it for a minute or 2 minutes or 20 minutes or 40 minutes. It's suitable for these kind of open-ended jams. And there are some cultures where music in general is much more participatory as just like a baseline than it is in America. So, for example, in West Africa and Latin America, music participation is a much more widespread thing. So, like, my Latin American friends tell me, you just all get together and like sing songs and play drums, play percussion together, and that everybody does it, from like the little kids up to the grandparents, right? And certainly like dancing is a thing that everybody just kind of does as a part of routine social life. These Latin grooves at a large scale level are very repetitive and predictable, but then are very complex at this small level. And there are these multiple levels that you can participate at. So you can just, bang the claves together in a simple pattern, or you can play these like elaborate improvisational things on top as kind of more of a lead drummer, and everything in between. I'm talking about all of this in the context of Björk because Björk's music is not very suitable for participation. It's very complex, it's very unpredictable. The harmonies tend to be unstandard. And I think Björk is like aware that, she's certainly aware that she has this very intense fandom and she has people who want to be participating more in her music. She has certainly been very encouraging of fan remixes over the years. She even released an entire album of fan remixes of Army of Me as a charity thing. I thought that was pretty wonderful. And I'm sure she's thrilled when people want to cover her songs. Well, I'm not sure at all. I have no idea, but I would guess based on what I know about her. She did put out this book of scores of her music, yeah? And she hasn't spoken about exactly why she did that, but it seems like she did that in order to help people perform the songs. But it's a bit of a question, like, who is this book for? The scores are not literal transcriptions of what is on the albums. They're arrangements for keyboard instruments. And that makes sense. You're a lot more likely to have access to a piano than to like a string ensemble and a bunch of drum machines and an alpine horn and an accordion. She's clearly aiming this more at like classical musicians than at jazz or pop musicians because there are no chord symbols in these charts. And the drums aren't in there, like the bass line. Well, I guess the bass lines are in there in the left hand of the piano, but yeah, if you were gonna use these charts for your rock band or your R&B group or whatever to try to do a Björk song, you would have to do a lot of heavy interpretive lifting in order to be able to make that practical. And even though she did provide me with this whole chart of Bachelorette, I had to do a lot of transcribing anyway because there's a lot of stuff in the track that is not on the chart, all the strings and the outpouring and all that stuff. Now, none of this is meant as criticism of Björk. Björk is one of my great aesthetic heroes, and it is perfectly fine to be a presentational artist, right? Nobody's under any obligation to make participatory music, but Björk does seem to want more participation. So she talks about DJing and how much she loves DJing and how much she loves dancing and rave culture and techno culture. And, she did publish all these charts. And she did make all of this very kind of party-friendly dance music early in her career. And she still commissions all these remixes of her songs. And there's always at least one foot in club culture for even her more recent kind of far-out stuff. My suggestion for her, if she's listening to this, and I doubt that she is, but I would be thrilled if she was, is, I don't know, man, like make like a sing-along album, or write a bunch of children's songs, like make something that people can just kind of stomp and clap to and sing along with. I think that would be really great. Maybe that's just selfish of me because it's fun performing Björk songs. Like I have performed a bunch of them and I love them, but yeah, they're real difficult. And I think it would be a nice gesture to write some stuff that invites more audience participation. Bachelorette has potential. It is pretty simple and pretty repetitive. It is something that you could do in a jam session or in a jazz band, I guess, although it's kind of too simple, actually. Without all of the production and arrangement, it doesn't quite hold together in my observation. Björk knows how to write a hook. Like, she knows how to write a catchy melody. I don't know. I could see it working. Anyway, I say all of that because I really do love her music, and I would just love to have more ways to participate in it. And I think a lot of her fans would probably agree with me. Thank you very much for listening.
Hey!